The studio lights burned brighter than ever as John Stewart, host of The Daily Show and a man never afraid of stepping on royal toes, tore into Prince Harry with the kind of biting commentary that has made him one of America's most fearless satirists. But this wasn't just comedy. It was a calculated, fiery attack that left audiences gasping. Stewart didn't mince words as he accused Harry of siphoning off a jaw-dropping $50 million from Sentebale, the charity he co-founded to support vulnerable children in Africa. The timing of Harry's sudden resignation from the charity only added fuel to the inferno Stewart had unleashed live on air, painting the Duke of Sussex as nothing more than a disgraced opportunist who traded royal duty for personal greed. From the opening punchline, Stewart made sure his audience understood the gravity of the accusations. "Prince Harry," he began, his tone laced with sarcasm, "the man who left the palace because it was all too suffocating, now seems to have found plenty of room in his pockets for $50 million in donations that mysteriously disappeared." The audience laughed nervously, but Stewart's words carried weight. What began as satire quickly hardened into something far more serious, a monologue laced with facts, timelines, and pointed questions about Harry's integrity. For years, the prince had painted himself as a victim of the monarchy's cruelty. Now, in Stewart's framing, Harry was no victim at all. He was a villain of his own story. Behind the laughter, the allegations struck at the heart of Harry's carefully constructed public image. Sentebale was supposed to be his redemption arc, the noble cause that proved he was more than a disgruntled royal. Yet Stewart's monologue suggested otherwise. "You don't just resign from your own charity overnight," Stewart jabbed. "Unless, of course, the receipts are about to come due." The crowd erupted, but the undertone was serious. Harry's abrupt exit from Sentebale had left questions unanswered, and Stewart wasn't afraid to fill the silence with accusations that the mainstream press had danced around for weeks. This was more than satire. It was exposure. Stewart laid out a timeline that made Harry's departure from Sentebale look less like a choice and more like a calculated escape. In the weeks before the resignation, whispers had circulated about irregularities in the charity's financial statements. Millions of dollars in donor funds had reportedly gone missing, yet no explanation was forthcoming. Stewart seized on this gap, painting Harry as a man cornered by his own deceit. He said he wanted freedom, Stewart mocked, but maybe what he really wanted was freedom from an audit. The damning commentary came at a time when Harry and Meghan were already under fire for their lavish lifestyle in California. Stewart's tirade drew direct lines between Harry's so-called philanthropic work and the couple's expensive private jets, luxury mansion, and endless stream of high-profile deals. "Funny how the guy preaching about compassion and climate change always seems to land in a private jet," Stewart remarked. "And now, it looks like he found a way to fund it straight out of the charity jar." The crowd roared, but the laughter carried an edge. Stewart had voiced what many were thinking, but few dared to say outright. Harry's commitment to charity might have been a front for personal enrichment. The impact of Stewart's monologue was immediate and seismic. Within hours, clips of the broadcast were trending across social media platforms, racking up millions of views. Hashtags calling Harry a thief spread like wildfire. Former donors to Sentebale began demanding transparency, and media outlets scrambled to investigate. What had begun as a comedy sketch was now snowballing into a global scandal, and Harry's name was at the center of it. And while Meghan remained conspicuously silent, Stewart didn't spare her in his commentary either. "If you think Harry's acting alone in this," he smirked, "I've got a Netflix contract to sell you." The implication was clear. Meghan's ambition and Harry's financial desperation were a toxic cocktail that had finally boiled over into something far darker than tabloid gossip. Stewart's words planted seeds of suspicion that Meghan may have been complicit, or at the very least, a beneficiary, of the alleged embezzlement. By the end of Stewart's segment, the narrative had shifted. No longer was Harry seen as the exiled prince fleeing from the cruelty of his family. Instead, Stewart framed him as a fraud, a man who had abandoned duty in pursuit of luxury, even at the expense of the vulnerable children his charity was meant to serve. For Stewart, this wasn't about royal drama. It was about accountability. And for Harry, it was nothing less than character assassination on live TV, broadcast of millions and etched permanently into the digital age. The fallout was inevitable. As headlines swirled and demands for investigation grew louder, the once beloved People's Prince was forced to confront an image he could no longer control. John Stewart had ripped away the veil, exposing not the charming victim Harry had long portrayed, but a figure of hypocrisy, greed, and betrayal. The accusations unleashed by John Stewart didn't just vanish when the cameras stopped rolling. They detonated across the globe like a scandalous bomb. Within hours, newspapers, online tabloids, and even mainstream outlets latched onto Stewart's fiery claims, repeating his words with alarming seriousness. What was supposed to be a comedic monologue suddenly transformed into a headline-generating frenzy. Prince Harry accused of $50 million charity theft. Sentebale scandal rocks Sussex image. And John Stewart says Harry lied to the world. For Harry, the timing couldn't have been worse. Just weeks earlier, he and Meghan had attempted a quiet rebrand, shifting their narrative away from royal feuds and toward philanthropic endeavors. Now, the one cause he touted as his greatest achievement, Sentebale, was being dragged to the mud, and with it his credibility. Donors who had once proudly associated themselves with the charity began pulling away. A London hedge fund manager who had given millions to the cause anonymously told reporters, "If even half of what Stewart suggested is true, then Harry has betrayed not only us, but the very children he claimed to be helping." Others demanded a forensic audit, their trust shattered. Social media amplified the outrage. Posts went viral comparing Harry to other fallen public figures who had siphoned charity funds for personal luxuries. Memes flooded Twitter and TikTok, mocking Harry as a royal pickpocket. And while Harry kept silent, the royal family did not. Clarence House issued a curt statement distancing King Charles and the rest of the firm from Harry's charity dealings. The Queen Consort, Camilla, reportedly made a sharp remark during a private dinner that was leaked to press. "If you abandon duty, don't be surprised when duty abandons you." Prince William, though careful with his words, was said to be privately furious that his brother's alleged misconduct could tarnish the wider royal institution. Sources close to William told the Times, "This is exactly why the palace warned Harry against setting up independent ventures without proper oversight. He has no one to blame but himself." Meanwhile, Meghan's silence became its own story. Paparazzi caught her in Montecito looking tense, avoiding questions from journalists about the scandal. Yet, whispers circulated that Meghan had known about Harry's financial struggles with Sentebale long before the resignation. Critics pounced on this, suggesting she might have encouraged him to step away before the allegations became public knowledge. Others painted her as complicit, arguing that Meghan had directly benefited from the couple's opulent lifestyle funded by questionable streams of income. John Stewart, for his part, doubled down. On his next show, he addressed the backlash head-on, saying, "Some people are calling me harsh for labeling Harry a thief. But let's be clear, if this were anyone else, if this were a Wall Street banker or a Hollywood exec, nobody would hesitate to call it what it is. Why should Harry get a free pass because he wears a crown in exile?" The audience cheered, and the clip went viral again. Stewart had turned the scandal into a moral crusade, positioning himself as a lone truth-teller in a sea of sycophantic coverage. A set of documents, allegedly pulled from within Sentebale itself, surfaced online through an anonymous whistleblower. They weren't vague claims or ambiguous reports. They were receipts, bank transfers, and internal memos. The files painted a disturbing picture. Tens of millions that were meant for HIV/AIDS programs in Lesotho and Botswana had been rerouted through shadow accounts, with traces leading back to shell companies connected to Harry's personal circle. The documents claimed Harry had approved special allocations of funds that mysteriously disappeared. In one particularly damning memo, the charity's financial officer raised concerns about irregular withdrawals and unjustified executive expenses, only to be allegedly silenced and later dismissed. The media devoured the revelations. Headlines screamed betrayal. Harry's blood money scandal trended for days, with tabloids splashing pictures of impoverished African children alongside Harry and Meghan's sprawling Montecito mansion. The contrast was devastating. Public outrage exploded. In London, protesters gathered outside the charity's headquarters, holding signs that read, "Where's the money, Harry?" and "Children are not your piggy bank." In Botswana, where Sentebale was once celebrated as a beacon of hope, activists expressed fury. One local leader told reporters, We trusted him because of his mother's legacy. He has shamed that trust. And then, as if fate were twisting the knife, Meghan Markle became part of the storm. Investigative journalists began connecting dots, suggesting that some of the missing funds may have been funneled into Archwell projects and even Meghan's personal ventures. A report alleged that a luxury retreat Meghan had organized in California had been partially financed through charitable reallocations. Whether true or not, the optics were catastrophic. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't just a supportive wife standing silently by. She was implicated. The press branded her the mastermind duchess, while others accused her of being the quiet beneficiary of Harry's mismanagement. Meghan's critics, long waiting for a scandal to confirm their suspicions, pounced with merciless glee. Prince Harry, cornered by mounting evidence, finally tried to fight back. His spokesperson issued a statement denying any wrongdoing, insisting that all funds were handled transparently and in line with international standards. But it was too late. The public no longer trusted him. The denials only made him look guilty. The royal family, seizing the opportunity, deepened the divide. Palace insiders leaked that William had been briefed months earlier about financial red flags at Sentebale and had urged Harry to clean up his operations. Harry, reportedly, had dismissed the warning as jealous meddling. That detail, once published, gave William the upper hand in the public eye. He appeared measured and responsible. Harry appeared reckless and defiant. Meanwhile, John Stewart's monologue now seemed prophetic. Clips of his initial accusation, Harry stole from his own charity, were replayed alongside the leaked documents, making it look as though Stewart had simply said what others already knew. Stewart himself mocked the development on his show. Turns out the punchline wasn't a joke after all. Who knew? The audience roared, but for Harry, it was the sound of his credibility collapsing. The scandal wasn't just financial anymore. It had become moral. Harry and Meghan were no longer just accused of mishandling money. They were branded as hypocrites, people who preach compassion while allegedly exploiting the vulnerable. The betrayal narrative gained traction, fueled by every new headline.